I have a few things that I'd like to follow up on from prior meetings. So maybe we can go through those and then we'll jump into some opens. I think these will go quickly. It's mainly just getting updates and making sure some loose ends were closed that I recall from some discussions and found in the notes. The first one is from July 25th. We were talking about XUnit and Google Test. And I think Nate and you, Mike, were discussing that there was some work done there that we might want to bring in. Were there any updates on that or any plans to make further progress on that side of things?
Yes, from there was a suggestion, I think, from one of those earlier meetings that a first attempt at adding Google Test to the EDK2 unit test framework package that looked interesting all on its own, even without mocking support as a way to get started. It would have some value in its in that first form. So I think I'm going to move ahead with that. I've got a couple other things queued up, but that is the plan is to do Google Test first, and then evaluate some options for how to support mocking within that. With some other discussions I've had, I've got a few ideas on how to get mocking supported for C code. One of the challenges is that the Google Mocks, as it's currently implemented, is really focused on C++ code, and it's a challenge to get it to work in a pure C environment. But it looks like there may be some paths through on that. So that needs some more experimentation. And once I have a solid proposal, I would do a follow-up to the Google Test patch review with that addition of the mocking support.
Okay, sounds good. So I don't think we have like a timeline or anything like that, but I'll just say that we're still interested in pursuing that and that work's being done on it.
Yeah, I would say as a goal, I'd like to see at least the first step of the Google Test things make it into the next release here in November.
Okay. So I'd say would like to target the November stable tag.
Yeah.
For the first release or initial support, I'll say. Okay. We're kind of moving up the dates on September 26th. There was, which I guess was recently, the discussion about OpenSSL stuff. There were quite a few things noted about like all the OpenSSL lib versus the OpenSSL crypto or lib crypto, and I think we were discussing some improvements that could be made to CI build performance. Do you know if we're tracking that? If anything's been done, and which of those we want to prioritize getting done?
Yes, and I've been working on some updates to the crypto package in discussion with the crypto package maintainers. I had hoped to have a patch out for full community review this morning, but realized that we don't even have a README in the crypto package. So I'm running the README for the crypto package that describes how to configure platforms to use the crypto services. So as soon as that's done, I'll send out the patch review with that content. A couple of the big changes that are in this proposed update to the crypto package is that there was a use of a file filter in an INF based upon for elliptic curve functions based upon a feature flag PCD. And based on some analysis, that doesn't scale well to use that feature in that way. Using the file filter in an INF is great if you're trying to select between different implementations of a set of services. And the common way that's used is, for example, selecting between the GCC assembly versus the Microsoft assembly versus the NASM assembly, implementation of the same services, but a different source implementation of those. So that's a good use of the file filter. Using the file filter to actually turn off a set of services out of a library instance doesn't make sense because it breaks one of our fundamental assumptions about library classes in EDK2, where library instances always produce all of the services defined by the class. So that's the thing that gets reason why I don't like that use of that feature in that way that's been proposed for how to turn on and off the ecliptic curve functions based on some issues with size. So the replacement one is to have a different INF of the OpenSSL lib that has the full EC services versus stubbed out EC services and doesn't use that feature flag. So that's one of the major changes that's occurring. It's relatively invisible to everyone that hasn't been looking at the ecliptic curve functions at all. But I've got to work through also the platform teams or downstream uses of ecliptic curve in that feature flag PC to make sure that we have a good transition there.
Okay. Was that PCD the OpenSSL EC enabled one or a
Yeah,
different?
yeah,
Okay.
that's the one. And the second feature that came in was some performance optimizations for some of the cryptographic functions, and those had INFs added that were not part of the CI build DSC at all. And they were for INFs that could be merged into a single one. So I've also consolidated all of those together. So now the platform developer has to select from one of 5 OpenSSL INF files, some with acceleration, some without acceleration, some with the full set of services, including the ecliptic curve, and some with the standard set of services without ecliptic curve. So that's the choice the platform developer has to make when they pick the right OpenSSL lib.
Okay. Makes sense why you're working on the README also then.
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. So I noted that you're working on the patch and putting the integration details in the README that will come in with the patch series, and it will explain how to integrate the varying levels of support in the different INF files that are going to be there.
Correct. And I'd say you're from your follow-up of your previous notes you have there, there are still some oddities about how the crypto package basically hard codes which subset of services are available in different phases, like SEC, PEI, Dixie, UEFI runtime, and SMM. There's some hard-coded in the INF files which services are available, and then you can subset those from there using a PCD. So I'm also describing that, what that table of those, hard-coded decisions are. And I think that's something that we could potentially make more flexible in the future, but it may require some base tools enhancements to get there. So I'm not tackling that problem yet. I'm just noting that I think that's an open issue with respect to that package and the services and that hard-coded decision to turn off certain subsets in a hard-coded way in the INF, and to see if there's a way to make that more flexible so that it's the platform developer's choice as to which services are turned off in each phase, instead of it being no choice because of the INF decision in the crypto package.
Okay. Right. So you basically make that less cryptic and more transparent to people whenever they're integrating.
And more configurable, because one of the challenges I've noted from various questions I've gotten to the crypto package over the years is that they come up with a new use case, especially in the early phases of boot, like in the SEC phase or the PEI phase, and the service isn't even available at all. You can't even turn it on without like modifying one of the crypto lib INF files. And so it's that kind of request that if they could turn it on themselves as opposed to having to modify upstream code, that would be a better use case for them.
Right. Was this just the EC stuff or all of crypto? I missed that at the beginning.
Yeah, that applies to all of crypto. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. There's like
Mike,
3 layers of configurability, and it's very complex.
so Mike, last time I checked, the crypto package needs writable globals, so you couldn't really do pre-memory anyway, right?
There are some crypto services that are not compatible with certain phases of execution. That's correct. So that's one of the reasons why they should be turned off. But unfortunately, I can't find any documentation that says which specific services they know for sure that's the case, and why they're turned off in certain phases.
I seem to recall most of OpenSSL having like some enormous buffer that like almost every function accesses.
Well,
At
so
least
from
last
a
time I
read,
looked at it.
right, from a read perspective, you're absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons why we get size growth. For example, turning on ecliptic curve had a size impact even if you never used one of those functions. And the reason is that when they get to ciphers, they have a global data structure that registers all the possible ciphers, mainly for ASN1 parsing, to decode those. And so, and then because there's a reference to those services from that global structure, it from a COMDAT, optimization perspective, it can eliminate them because there's a reference to them from that data structure.
Yeah, that tracks.
All right, that sounds
You get
good.
through it-
Nope.
When you get through with the README, does that mean you're complete for now? Unless there's obviously issues?
For the proposed set of changes, yes, with the one thing that may cause it to be broken into two patch series is if there's a lot of downstream platforms that are already depending upon the feature flag for EC enabled.
Okay.
All right. I think we can move on to another topic, which is I think I'll go through it's a CodeQL update real quick, and then we can maybe go to the GitHub PR review update. So as people in this meeting should know, the RFC expired, or the time for feedback expired last Tuesday. So I'm getting ready to transition EDK2 over to its first CodeQL query. From a integration standpoint, I don't foresee any major problems technically to be able to do it. I'm doing some internal work with it in Project Mu right now, just to be transparent. So that's why I'm not jumping on the EDK2 part right away. Some of the stuff I'm doing on the Project Mu side will directly transfer over to EDK2 anyway. For example, I'm building a query pack that will define all of our queries that we're using. That is the thing that whenever we add a new query, we'll go and update that file to add the one that we want. And whenever the action runs, it will go look at the query file and run the list of queries against that to generate the results. So that a lot of that kind of infrastructural work will pretty much be the same. The other thing I'm adding is a Stewart integration support to generate a CodeQL database locally. So this is something else that will benefit EDK2. For the people that are using Stewart commands, there will be a CodeQL flag. Whenever that gets turned on, it will provide the ability for the Stewart tools to wrap the build command with the CodeQL tracers, so that whenever the code is built through the build command, it will it'll be able to track what's happening and generate the CodeQL database after the build. There are some other nice pieces that are wrapped up inside that. Like, for example, this only works if you do a clean build. So internal to the build command, I can set that it must do a clean build whenever this happens, and all those types of things. There's also a few pieces that are slightly different between Linux and Windows whenever you run the CodeQL CLI. So those will be addressed, and there will be a number of other things kind of tucked in there. But the end result is that it'll be very simple to generate a database. You'll just run your normal build command, and then you'll just put -- CodeQL, and that will do it. So that's a piece that I expect to be done pretty soon, and that will go into EDK2 PyTool extensions and be able to benefit everyone. And as soon as that's actually the piece I'm wrapping up at the moment, as soon as that's done, I'm going to come back to EDK2 and enable our first query. I don't know which one exactly it will be, but it will be one that doesn't generate very many results because I just want to get the infrastructure in place and I want to get the process in place before we're overwhelmed by issues. And then I want to get on the RFC proposed process of enabling one query at a time and being able to walk people through how to make those branches and fix issues on them and things like that. So that's a general update. The summary is that once I finish that Stewart integration work, I will move to the EDK2 GitHub Action side of things and get us enabled.
Is it possible to just do like an empty code QL query such that the first PR you submit just turns it on so it gets a green check mark? And then you can then do your first PR after that. That is the one that enables the first check with issues resolved.
Yeah, that should be possible, and I can do that. Yeah, I can go down that path. I did want to have the Stewart stuff in place just because I wanted to give people, once it's turned on, the ability to be able to generate a database locally and enable, because I look at the developer enabling flow, and I'll probably write this down somewhere, as you edit the query file that's checked into the repo locally to add your new query. You then generate a database and you run that query set against the database. That will generate all of your new results, which will basically be new failures. You fix those for the areas you want to fix them in, and then you push that to a branch and share it with others so they can go fix the areas that they own, like their packages and things like that. So I wanted to at least get the Stewart kind of local experience in place. But as soon as that's done, I think I will go with that approach and just enable an empty query set for us to run it through like the GitHub action flows and everything.
Right, and then get that active. Yeah,
Yeah.
That way that everyone will start seeing the code QL check there, and then you can start on even a number of parallel PRs if it makes sense to try to turn on a couple different ones if that's the workflow that's required based upon developers' time available to review the changes or help with the changes.
Yep.
My other quick question on this is, because we had evaluated Open Coverity, there were a few requests from developers to join the Open Coverity project. I'm curious, Michael, if you want me to forward them a contact for you, because if they're interested in helping resolve static analysis issues, having them focus on the code QL issues would probably be more beneficial at this point, and we can setting Open Coverity aside until we get up to some baseline of code QL checks.
Yeah, I agree. I after looking at this a bit more, I kind of also want to change the way we think about static analysis tools a little bit from like a tool-based discussion to an issue-based discussion. So what I'd like to see from Coverity is it finding issues that we can't find in code QL? That's the first thing. Like, I just really would like to say, I want to get rid, I want to be able to find issues, not run tools. So what issues are we finding there that we're not finding here? And theoretically, we should be able to find anything with code QL because we can write our own queries to do so. So if we're missing something in code QL, instead of focusing on running Coverity, I'd rather focus on let's create a query that can go find that information. So I would like to work on it. I just would like to look at it from the perspective of, is there a way that we can more effectively use code QL rather than running tons of tools at one, after each other? Obviously, it's a lot more efficient for us to just try to get this done in one pass through code QL, because once we generate a database, we can run whatever query logic we want against it to find issues.
No, I agree with your approach. It makes a lot of sense. And I was just wondering if you minded if I forwarded some contacts, to you so that to see if there's opportunities to coordinate on the code QL activities and focus everybody's efforts there. And then if those developers that are interested in Coverity can want to circle back, that's great. And then they can maybe provide feedback on code QL.
Yeah.
And how to make it better.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what we need to do to try to get our process where it needs to be.
Right, and I sent one, I think there was an AMI developer that was doing some Coverity work, so I responded to them on the mailing list, but there's a few others that have been asking about it.
Okay, sounds good. Nate, I think you were going to say something.
So just random, is CodeQL like another static analysis tool or something?
Yeah, it's a static analysis tool that GitHub provides.
Okay.
The main advantage to it, and I wrote all this up in the RFC and the EDK2 discussion, but the main advantage to it is it's probably one of the more open CI tools, and it has kind of first party support in GitHub. And so it's open source, and a lot of the queries are open source, and we have the ability to extend it with the queries, and it has a lot of nice integration with GitHub. For example, like even for the local experience with CodeQL CLI, we can pull queries from a GitHub query registry rather than having to host them ourselves. So a lot of the core queries that will come from the open source repo I'm planning to pull down that way. I just run a CodeQL analyze database command, and you give it a hyphen download flag, and it will go, and whatever queries you're using, it'll automatically pull them down, cache them, and it's kind of like a package manager type thing, but for the query files and stuff. So it has like a lot of nice features and stuff kind of built in to work with, and there's a lot of information and documentation about it. All right. Last, I guess one other topic I have is on CI packages. So, or CI for all the packages in EDK2. I did complete all of the patch series last week to enable CI. So every package in EDK2 at this point should be in CI. So that's a win. Now we need to probably follow up with a second pass of actually turning on the checks in a lot of these CI files that are kind of just turned on and off across different packages today. I don't know if there's any that are significant that we care about. Most of them are things like a lot of people don't want to turn on spell check in their package. I think it's obviously more professional to have things to not have typos everywhere, but it's not entirely critical to do. So there's a lot of stuff like that that we need to go through and decide if as a project we care that we have typos or not, or that we have where are some of the other ones that are common out there. I think DSC complete may have been off in a few. There's just ones like that that are out there. But that's the only update I have there. I do not plan to go do any of that myself anytime soon. So I just wanted to get CI enabled.
Yeah, thanks for getting that all turned on, Michael. I know it was a bit of a cat herding exercise to get everybody to provide the reviews, but thanks for getting all that. There's setting the baseline, and I think that allows, really anybody from this point forward to then, improve the quality of the checks that are on each one of those packages.
Yep. Yeah, it's honestly, it's not that hard. It's just work to turn them on. So yeah, people can do that if they have some time. That's the updates for me. Did you want to talk about like GitHub PR review update, Mike?
I don't have any new status on it because of my work on the crypto package. So I will, as soon as I get this patch sent out and it's kind of back into the crypto package maintainer's hands, I will come back to that.
Okay. I guess one last topic that I had seen that we discussed a while back, I wanted to follow up on were containers. We don't have Oliver or Chris here who are doing, I think, most of the work for turning on the containers over there, but I know that we have them in the GitHub container registry. I've pulled down the Fedora container and used it on VS Code locally, and I didn't have any problem. So it looked pretty good to me. Uh, do we have we discussed before in this meeting moving the EDK2 CI process to be container based? I think we have, but we didn't have any substantial like discussion around that, right? We just said that it's something we'll probably do in the future.
Yeah, I think the genesis of this was for the Linux Docker image container was for CI, because when we tried to move to Ubuntu latest under Azure pipelines, we had some odd compatibility issues with QEMU or some other things, and that the solution they came up with was to use containers to be able to get the compatible set available for our CI usage. So I think that is the first usage for the Linux CI agents in Azure pipelines. And I think there was a discussion about Windows containers and whether or not those were required, and I don't remember where that conversation landed.
Okay, yeah, that's what I don't recall either. I guess the other thing I wanted to check on is if there is any interest in EDK2 and trying to use Visual or VS Code dev containers, or not. Are people aware of what those are and interested in trying to use those, or do we think that we'd rather not try that?
I remember those. Don't you have to pay for them?
No, you can just pull them down. It gives a so inside your project, we'd have a dev container.json file is like the main piece of this, and it would specify your Docker image, so that whenever VS Code loads, it automatically checks this JSON file, and it would say, this repo supports dev containers. Would you like to apply the container image for the repo? And then the user can say yes or no. And there's also a bunch of commands that you can put in dev container.json to bring the user's workspace up to a consistent level. Like you can put VS Code extension recommendations and extensions to install. So the main reason I thought this was interesting is because we can actually get developers all on a pretty like ready to go smooth setup by giving them a container image and then setting up their workspace with a lot of the CI, like a lot of the VS Code extensions and everything that we use, like core fundamental extensions we could just install as part of the JSON. Other ones you can put as recommendations. So it would say like, the owners of this repo are not requiring that you install this extension, but they recommend that you do, and then they can choose to do that. That would be things like maybe the ASL extension, and things like that. We may put as a required extension like the EDK2 one that a lot of people may or may not be using, but it helps with like syntax highlighting of DSC and FDF files and all that kind of stuff. So I guess the main thing that I was looking at is like a way to give people a pretty consistent and ready, like out of the box developing experience. It also helps because VS Code supports web-based usage, so you can use VS Code from a web browser. So technically, people could like develop in the cloud for the most part if we had dev containers to allow them to do so.
Yeah, have you seen, I think it's Code Spaces? Have you seen that feature of GitHub?
I haven't looked into that one a whole lot yet, though.
Okay. Yeah, there's a number of things that give you a web-based full development environment hosted within GitHub. And I agree that that may be a way to provide a sandbox with almost instant, development environment for like new developers. It may not be ideal if it's all web-based versus some local work, depending on what you're doing. But if it's somebody just trying it out for the first time, or for some small bug fixes and some things like that, it may be really valuable.
Yeah, because I think every week I see multiple email messages about people trying to build stuff and it's not working. Like if you go to the EDK2 discussions, there's people trying to run build commands and they don't work. And then I see emails all the time about people like having trouble setting up their local workspace to be able to build properly. Um, so having like that just easy to use out of the box environment seemed like it could just help bring people up to speed and not have to deal with so many of those issues.
So the current Docker file up there will work only in the Azure cloud, or will that work locally as well?
It works locally. I used it locally
Okay.
on my Windows machine. I was running it through WSL2 using Docker, and it worked fine for me. One major limitation of the VS Code side specifically is they don't support Windows containers right now for dev containers. So that's just something to take into account. I think that they look at the native experience as being okay, and they wanted to focus more on this like WSL Linux container kind of approach as their priority. But
So the WSL runs WSL2. So when you just do the WS install, is it doing WSL 1 or 2, or do you have to go out of your way to install the WSL2?
I don't remember the exact command now, but I do know you can select which one you want. I
Well,
don't remember which
it
one
gave
it is by
you
default.
two choices, and that's why I was scratching my head. And I guess with Windows 11, there's something about the new preview allowing you to run the PowerShell side by side with the WSL running with multiple instances, right? So I'm not sure, for our development if we needed that or not.
Yeah, I think in terms of like what I was looking at is like would we be I guess, open to if we were to go do work looking into that area, possibly adopting it in EDK2.
It would save a lot of time. Like you said, people waste a lot of time trying to get the environment
Yeah.
working on their particular native box, right? So having a container and everything, Masm, Python, everything installed, right? And you just pull the image, Docker image down or
Right.
VHD image down or whatever, right? And you just go, as opposed to playing games with trying to get all those tools to run on your particular box, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think that I brought this up before in EDK2 platforms that a lot of, I mean, it's kind of just the way platform work goes that individual platforms use their own tools. That's just kind of the nature of platform work, I think. So they're going to use their own version of NASM. They're going to have their own custom tools to repackage this or do that. So I think that this could also be very useful for doing some of that type of stuff and just pulling down all the dependencies you need.
So the Dev Studio tools would also be able to run natively or not? Those don't allow you to run natively, or
Which ones?
not in the cloud, basically, if you have it down locally on your machine.
The dev container allows you to.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, it gets you completely set up. It just remotes into the container. So
Okay.
it's as if you're like how they have, like, you can work in WSL and VS Code. You can work within your container in VS Code. Okay, I think maybe I'll take a note that we'll look at that a bit and share any more information about how to reuse those containers, not only for CI, which I think is the direction we're heading now, but possibly for other useful things like making developer experience a little better.
Right, and I want to encourage developers that use different environments than the containers we have to, come help contribute to that containers repository. Because I think once we have a few recipes for, a couple Linux ones, it'll be easy to clone and modify those for other Linux environments.
Yep.
So
Okay.
I do have a quick open here. So as part of this container upgrade, would it be possible for us to enable a Clang build for EDK2? Because I don't think we have one yet. That's I checked anyway.
Oh, for CI, you're talking about a Clang CI build?
Yeah, for CI specifically.
Yep. And for Windows, Linux, or both?
Well, ideally both, honestly.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's valuable to put on the list. I think the one of the analysis we'll have to do is the what our CI execution time is, because it would, I think, would effectively double us to do for a Windows agent to do Visual Studio and Clang, and then on Linux to do GCC and Clang. So I think it would double our CI overhead.
Yeah, it might, but I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the UEFI payload package doesn't build with anything but Clang anymore.
Okay.
So it seems like something we should probably be testing in CI.
Yeah. So yeah, Michael, you probably put that as a capture as a note in the minutes, is that there's a request for Clang.
Yeah, I think we've brought that up a few times before. Is there a Bugzilla that you're aware of to track it?
I don't know.
Okay, I don't know if it'd really matter, but it would be nice to.
Yeah,
at least have
I
something.
can search the Bugzilla to see if somebody's already filed it or not, but
Okay.
at least I have not.
I would
All
also
right.
just to help clarify, if you find it or not, either way, Nate, you can maybe clarify which version of Clang, because I know over the years we've had some different profiles of Clang in our tools def. So kind of helping, refine the request to what version of Clang you want to see coverage on would help.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, it seems like everybody's using Clang 11.0.
Right. Yeah.
Were we going to upgrade our GCC version? Like I thought we were talking about how old it was and we wanted to upgrade recently.
What's in our CI right now? Doesn't it do latest, or is it locked at a specific version?
Let's see. I'll follow up on that after the meeting. We don't need to waste time.
Okay.
I'll check GCC version. Okay, I took a note for that.
Yeah, there is no Bugzilla, so I'll just file one.
Okay, I'll put down that you'll file the Bugzilla for Clang support.
Which component do we put CI under? Do you know? I can choose code, documentation, test, and tools.
Tools.
Tools, okay.
Yep.
Okay. I don't think that'll be hard to add at this point. It will just, like Mike said, increase our overall time. It's the only downside, though.
Do you think it would be possible to get the Azure Pipelines guys to give us more parallel jobs?
Right. It's always helpful. We should probably measure what our CI time is, with and without current, and then the adder of Clang. And then the other thing that I think would be useful to discuss is the coverage of Clang relative to the other ones. Is it, package builds enough, or do we want to do the full platform builds, the QEMU boots, all those different things. When you start doing multiple tool chains, it's what value do you get from the full testing versus some interesting subsets?
Yeah, and I think we're doing like multiple. I think we're still doing multiple targets, like debug and release on the same tool chain as well, and things like that. That just for like CI build purposes, we may be able to eliminate some things like that. So I'll say Nate will file, and then we need to evaluate build coverage between our different tool chains. Pilot tool chains. Okay. All right. Let's just follow up on the two base tool issues from last week. The first one was the feature flag bug. I think that was in Bugzilla 4081 is where it's being tracked, and I don't see any updates The error. Oh, okay. Someone's working on it. So that one, I think, has progress being made. And the next one was on the use of structured PCD fields and feature flag expressions, and whether or not we need to support that. Is that something we need to discuss here, or does it need like a Bugzilla, or what are the next steps on that?
I think it requires more analysis before entering a formal request for a feature on that. So that's related to that, the deferred activity around the crypto package, for example. Do we need, a base tools feature to make the base crypt libs more configurable? And so that was just one concept, but I think I'm going to set that one aside and think about it some more and figure out if there's a better way to achieve that configurability. One of the challenges in expanding the use of the structured PCD fields throughout the EDK2 metadata files is it's one of those things that just kind of stretches out and reaches out through a lot of places in base tools. And so we better have a really compelling reason before we ask for that feature.
Okay. All right. That covers the things in the prior meetings that I saw for follow up. Are there any opens or any other topics people would like to discuss? Got the Bugzilla number for the notes. Doesn't sound like there's any further topics.
Not for me.
All right. Well, if not, then I think that'll end today's meeting, and I will see you next week.
Have a good